It was supposed to be just another day, the kind you don't remember a week from now. The city pulsed with its usual rhythm, cars honking, people rushing, clocks ticking as if they had somewhere better to be. And there she was, in the middle of it all, moving like everyone else, fast, focused, fine. But something was different. It wasn't the coffee she skipped that morning or the meeting she almost missed. It was subtler than that, like a frequency only her soul could detect, an invisible thread tugging gently at her chest, asking her to pause, to listen. And so she did. For a second, she let the noise fade. She stepped out of the stream of urgency and stood still, truly still, for the first time in months. In that silence, she didn't find an answer. She found a question that would change everything. She first saw him, in passing, nothing more than a flicker in her periphery, a man seated by the cafe window, bathed in late afternoon gold. His gaze wasn't searching, yet somehow, it found her. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met. No smiles, no nods, just a glance. Brief, electric. And then it was gone. But something about that look lingered, like a forgotten melody resurfacing from a distant dream. There was no reason for it to matter, no words were exchanged, no name spoken. And yet, her footsteps hesitated, as if her body knew what her mind refused to admit. He was a stranger, at least that's what the world would call him. But in her bones, she knew better. Because something deep within whispered, "You've met before, just not in this lifetime." And with that unshakable feeling, the world around her shifted. The ordinary blurred into the extraordinary, and the story, their story, was just beginning. They didn't speak, not at first. But silence has its own language, and theirs spoke volumes. In that quiet moment, standing inches apart, in the hush of a bookstore aisle, time seemed to catch its breath. Neither of them moved, neither of them knew why, and yet something pulsed between them, a tension that wasn't threatening, but sacred, as if the universe itself was holding its breath, watching. She reached for a book. So did he. Fingers brushed, eyes met. Again. It wasn't déjà vu. It was deeper than that. It was recognition without memory, a knowing that bypassed logic and landed squarely in the soul. They parted ways moments later. No conversation, no names. Just a lingering stillness in the space they had shared. But when she walked away, her heart wasn't the same. It beat to a rhythm she couldn't explain. Like a drum echoing an ancient call. A call that whispered, "You've been waiting for this moment across lifetimes." And somehow, she knew. He had heard it too. She didn't know his name, but his presence haunted her thoughts like a melody half remembered. Every night, when the world quieted and her mind drifted to stillness, his face would rise, unbidden yet welcome. The way he looked at her, not just with his eyes, but with something far more ancient, something eternal. There was no conversation between them, no introduction, and yet he lived in her like a story waiting to be told. She found herself retracing the steps of that fleeting encounter again and again. The brush of hands, the weight of silence, the feeling that something massive had shifted beneath the surface of her life, though everything on the outside looked the same. She tried to forget, but forgetting was impossible when your soul had been branded. So instead, she whispered into the night, "Who are you?" And though no voice answered, deep down she felt the truth. Some connections don't need a name to be unforgettable. She didn't see him again. Days turned to weeks, and the world moved on as if nothing had happened. But within her, the memory clung, like the echo of a dream, too real to ignore. It wasn't love, not yet, but something sacred had stirred, something neither time nor distance could silence. She held on to that moment, not with desperation, but with reverence, like a sacred page torn from a book the universe had written just for them. His face, etched in shadow and soft light, appeared to her in the most unexpected moments, in reflections, in the hush of twilight, in songs that seemed to speak a language only her heart could understand. Was it possible to feel so deeply for someone whose name she didn't even know? She didn't chase the answer, she simply trusted the feeling. Because sometimes the soul remembers what the mind has yet to understand. And in that quiet knowing, she waited, not for him to return, but for fate to speak again. It happened on a day like any other. Gray skies, the dull hum of routine. She had no reason to expect anything unusual, and yet there it was, a voice, familiar, unmistakable. She turned, slowly, as if afraid the spell might break, and there he stood, the man from that fleeting moment long ago. Except now, the moment wasn't fleeting. It had returned, with breath, with form, with undeniable reality. He looked at her like he remembered too. Not her face, perhaps, but the feeling, that strange, beautiful gravity that once pulled them into the same orbit. No grand gestures, no cinematic music rising in the background, just eyes meeting, souls remembering. They spoke, awkward at first, careful, like trying to hold water in their hands. But beneath the words was something steady, something ancient and waiting. She realized then, destiny doesn't knock loudly. It whispers, then steps back to see if you're listening. And this time, they both were. They began seeing each other more often, not by design, but by some strange rhythm the universe seemed to choreograph. Sometimes it was a shared glance across a crowded hallway, other times a casual conversation that lingered longer than it should have. The connection was subtle, never loud, but it shimmered beneath the surface, undeniable and quietly electric. He would say things that caught her off guard, words that felt like they came from somewhere deeper than memory. She would laugh, a little too softly, hiding how his presence stirred something inside her she had once buried. Yet neither made a move. There were walls, invisible yet solid, built from old wounds and unanswered questions. Both of them stood at the edge, sensing something profound, yet not daring to reach for it. The world continued spinning. Life kept unfolding, and in the quiet spaces between moments, their souls kept circling each other like constellations almost ready to align. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something sacred. A beginning written long ago, now waiting for the courage to be lived. There was something about him that tugged at her gently but persistently, like a forgotten melody playing faintly in the background of her life. She couldn't explain it. It wasn't logic or longing. It was deeper, older. When he spoke, she found herself listening not just to his words, but to the silence between them. And in those silences, echoes of something ancient seemed to stir. He wasn't trying to impress her. In fact, he often seemed unaware of the way her eyes lingered, the way she caught her breath when his voice softened. And yet, she felt seen, not in the way others saw her surface, her roles, her image, but in a way that felt like he was remembering something she had forgotten about herself. She didn't know what this meant. She wasn't even sure he felt the same, but her heart recognized something, a thread, a pull, a story that had been paused, not ended. So she let the connection be what it was, undefinable, mysterious, and quietly beautiful. Not rushing, not forcing, just allowing the moment to unfold, frame by frame, like a film slowly coming into focus. Because sometimes the heart knows long before the mind understands. And some stories, they wait lifetimes to be told. She had been fine. Truly she had. Life moved, the days passed, and she played her part well, smiling, striving, surviving. But when she met him again, something shifted, something ancient, something sacred. It wasn't a loud crash or sudden realization. It was more like a whisper through her bones, a soft ache blooming in a forgotten corner of her chest. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. Just the way he looked at her, like he was seeing past the years, past the masks, straight into the place where time didn't exist, was enough to unravel her. And it wasn't about romance. It wasn't even about longing. It was recognition, a soul looking at its mirror, a memory awakening. He touched nothing, yet everything inside her stirred, and she realized it wasn't that she had been missing him, it was that without knowing it, she had been waiting for this remembering. That sacred pull, that invisible thread. And in that moment, the world around her faded. Because when the soul remembers, time stops. The past breathes, and love, true, cosmic, wordless love, returns without asking for permission. She had built her peace like a temple, stone by stone, breath by breath. Years of solitude had taught her how to be still, how to bloom in silence, how to hold herself gently when the world was loud. But then he walked back in, and with him came the wind, He didn't speak of the past. He didn't ask for forgiveness. Yet his presence was thunder, soft at first, then shaking everything she had tucked neatly away. There was no anger in her, just the quiet tremble of memories waking up. His eyes held storms she remembered weathering. His voice echoed with things they once said without words, and though she stood firm, something inside her began to sway, not out of weakness, but recognition. She had forgotten what it felt like to be undone, to be seen, not as the woman she had become, but the girl who once believed in impossible love. He didn't try to stay, but he didn't need to, because the damage wasn't in what he did, it was in what he reminded her of, that somewhere deep beneath all her healing, she had never stopped waiting for the sound of his footsteps. He didn't say goodbye. There was no final word, no lingering touch, no backward glance. Just a door that closed too gently behind him, so gentle in fact, that it shattered her from the inside out. She sat there for hours after, not moving, not speaking, barely breathing, as if any sound might confirm what she already knew. He was gone. But it wasn't the absence that broke her, it was the echo. The way everything reminded her of him. The way the coffee went cold without someone to share it with. The way her favorite song now felt like a wound. The way silence had a voice, and it spoke only his name. She wasn't angry, she wasn't surprised, but she was undone, because somehow, without ever asking for it, he had taken pieces of her with him. Pieces she thought had healed, pieces she thought were hers again. And now, alone in that quiet room, she realized something devastating. He hadn't just left the house. He had left the part of her that once believed love could return. She stood at the threshold of the same door he had walked through, the memory of his departure still suspended in the air like dust catching sunlight. But she didn't follow. She didn't run down the hallway screaming his name. She didn't draft messages she'd never send or replay memories like broken film reels. Instead, she turned inward. It wasn't that she stopped loving him. No, love doesn't vanish just because it's unanswered. But for the first time, she realized she loved herself more. More than the waiting, more than the wondering, more than the ache of being someone's second choice. She let the silence stay. She let the stillness teach her that peace is not the absence of longing, but the presence of self-worth. And in that quiet moment, something profound happened. She didn't chase him. She didn't beg him to come back. She chose to rise, not because it didn't hurt, but because she was done bleeding for a love that never stayed. And in that decision, something powerful shifted. She was no longer the girl waiting by the door. She was the woman who finally closed it. When he came back, it wasn't with fireworks or grand gestures. It was quiet, hesitant, like a man who'd wandered too far into the storm and suddenly remembered where warmth once lived. He stood there, eyes searching hers, expecting to find the girl who used to wait, but she was gone. In her place stood a woman, not cold, not cruel, but whole. She didn't cry. She didn't rush into his arms. She didn't ask where he had been. Because in his absence, she had met herself. She had danced with her own shadows, sipped solitude like fine wine, and rebuilt a home within her own heart. So when he whispered, "I'm back," she didn't say, "I missed you." She said, "I found me." And that was the kind of truth that broke and healed at the same time. He looked at her like he was seeing a stranger and someone he'd always known, all at once. But she had already walked past the place where love begged for crumbs. And now she only opened her heart for those who could meet her in the fire, not just watch her burn.